It's 1936. You've just been appointed postmaster of a small rural town in the American Midwest. Your office is old and run down, and the few customers that come through the door don't exactly make your job any more tolerable. What you wouldn't give to escape this dead-end job. But unfortunately, that dream will have to wait because you have mail to deliver. Mail? What? Where? As it turns out, something strange has happened overnight. The bags of mail that were sitting here yesterday are gone. In fact, every trace of the Postal Service seems to have vanished. Where did they go? Why did they go? And can you get them back? Hi, I'm here to talk about an event that actually happened on July 2nd, 1936. It was a Wednesday. Some people say that if you disappear on a Wednesday, you are less likely to be missed. That sounds crazy, but then again, so does the rest of what I'm about to tell you. So let's get started. It was the height of the Great Depression, and James Garfield, the postmaster of Marionville, Missouri, was ready to quit his job. For one thing, he wasn't really cut out for this kind of work. For another, he had already applied for a different position at the post office in Springfield. And finally, his wife was expecting their first child soon, and he didn't want to start a family in such a run-down building. When Garfield arrived at the Marionville post office, which was also the town's jail and housed the local Red Cross and the WPA, he saw that the building's front door was locked. No big deal. He had a key. But when he opened the door, he noticed something weird. The post office bags that were supposed to be inside weren't there. What the hell? He looked around and realized that the windows had been smashed and the bags were gone. Now panicking, he called the local sheriff and explained the situation. He told him that the missing bags contained around $3,000 worth of money orders, which was a lot of money during the Depression. This was especially true in Marionville, whose population was 1,100 and whose biggest employer was a shoe factory that paid its workers 60 cents an hour. But the sheriff didn't seem too concerned. "Hell, Jim," he said, "I thought you were the smart one around here. You know, everyone robs the dumb post offices while you clowns sit around waiting for someone to come save you." Garfield wasn't sure what to say. His mind raced. Had he been robbed? Was he being set up? Would he ever see that money again? Meanwhile, another man was waking up in a hotel room in Kansas City, Missouri, roughly 170 miles from Marionville. His name was Edward Sanford, and he too was a postmaster, though technically retired. You see, he had used to work at the U.S. Post Office in Kansas City until 5 years prior, when his superiors discovered that he had been embezzling money. They forced him to resign and gave him two options: spend 5 years in prison or pay back everything you owe and move someplace else. Sanford chose the latter and ended up in Marionville. But Garfield wasn't the only one who lost mail that night. The same thing happened at the post offices in Greenfield, Sarcoxie, Liberal, Jasper, Bloomington, Golden, and St. Joseph, Missouri, as well as Webb City, Oklahoma. All of these post offices had something in common. Each one had a railroad line running right up to its door, and each one contained anywhere between $2,000 and $5,000 in money orders, which was a lot of money during the Depression. In total, 11 post offices were robbed. 18 men were suspected, 12 of whom were postmasters who had disappeared along with the mail. Of the 6 men who hadn't, 4 were innocent and 2 were accomplices. One was named Jess Rader, a former bootlegger who was known to travel by train and carry a crowbar. The other was Ernest Lee Coffey, a drifter who was wanted for raping a waitress in Blytheville, Missouri. That's right. These guys didn't just rob post offices. They also committed one of the greatest art heists in American history. Maybe you've heard of it. When the FBI tracked Rader and Coffey down, they found out that they'd taken the mail to St. Louis and left it with 2 accomplices, William J. Doolin and George Sutherland, who took it by truck to Chicago. From there, the gang split up. Doolin and Sutherland traveled to Florida. Coffee went to Texas, and Rader came back to Missouri, returning to his life of crime. That's right. The mastermind behind the largest series of post office robberies in U.S. history had a long criminal record. And as soon as the police realized what had happened, they put him on trial for Marionville. In court, Radnor's lawyer tried to poke holes in the prosecution's case. He pointed out that there were no fingerprints or other physical evidence linking his client to the crime, and that the government couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Rader had planned the heist. However, when Rader testified in his own defense, he admitted to stealing $4,000 from the post office, which made the prosecution's job much easier. Rader was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. However, he only served 10 before being paroled. Doolin and Sutherland were never caught. Coffee escaped twice, but was caught and served 18 years. Meanwhile, the missing male ended up being the least of Marionville's problems. What happened next is crazy. When Garfield heard this, he felt a lot better about his situation. At least he wasn't a criminal mastermind wanted for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Little did he know that a few weeks later, he would be arrested for stealing $10 from a woman who'd mailed some cash to her son. And that's the story of the curious case of the disappearing postal service. Or is it? Well, it turns out that a similar thing actually happened in 1934 when a group of thieves robbed 10 post offices in Iowa, which is why I've decided to call this episode 2. Thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have any suggestions for future episodes, please leave them in the comments below. Until next time, goodbye.